You fill up my senses like a night in the forest, like the mountains in springtime, like a walk in the rain, like a storm in the desert, like a sleepy blue ocean. You fill up my senses, come fill me again. We're going to take a look at a beautiful song. I can't quite do it justice with the pipes, but still, you can. Annie's Song by John Denver from his album Back Home Again in the mid-70s, early 70s. And this song is, again, a very heavily requested tune from my students, and I love to teach people it. And we're going to look at multiple ways of playing it, from very simply just strumming it with a pick, or a simple arpeggio pattern, or a more elaborate arpeggio pattern, kind of like what I just did right there, which is more how John plays it in drop D tuning. I have a capoed at the 2nd fret to put it in E, and I'm still singing an octave lower than he is. But so we're going to look at this song lots of different ways, and again, it can be relatively simple or fairly complex. We're going to have a lot of bar chords in there, and they're going to be changing fairly quickly. So there's a lot to learn from this song. So let's take a look at the way some of the chords are going to work and the picking that we want to do in Annie's Song. First thing I want to talk about in Annie's Song is essentially the Campfire version. This would be strumming it with a pick. We're in 3/4 time. It moves fairly quickly, and the chords change. There are some big changes, but I've modified it a little bit to have a few less complicated changes, but to keep the most important thing in this song, which is the bass line. So look at the tab, or there's no tab to this, but the chart that has the chords and the lyrics. The way we're going to look at it first is at the bottom of the page, the one I've labeled alternate verse. This is not exactly the way John Denver played it, but this is just the way I would show people, intermediate students. This is not a beginning guitar song, no matter what. So we're going to play the introduction, just alternating back and forth. First of all, our simple strumming pattern in 3/4 time is going to be bass, down, down, up, or bass, down, up, just keeping a 3/4 pattern going. So in the intro, all we need is 2 chords, D and D suspended 4 back and forth. Hopefully you know your D chord. D suspended 4, we're just going to create by adding your 4th finger to the G at the 3rd fret of the 1st string. So to slow this down a little bit, our intro would be D to D suspended 4. 2 sets of those would be plenty, and then we get into the singing. Now we just need to run through the chords. G, playing with your 3rd finger on the G in the bass, and the most important thing in this song is that you get the bass notes clean on the 1st beat of every measure. We could also play Annie's Song using a straight 6-note arpeggio, and this would be a little more similar to what John Denver really did. His is a little bit more random, and we'll talk about that in the next segment. But another great way to play it would just be straight 6 notes, meaning I'm playing a D chord starting with the bass note every time, and for every chord the bass note would either be on the 4th, 5th, or 6th string, just like this, the same bass notes we would have hit with the pick. But we want to use the pattern that goes thumb, index, middle, ring, middle, index. So we're going from the 3rd string to the 2nd string to the 1st string, back to the 2nd, and back to the 3rd after the bass note. I call this a straight up and down arpeggio. We're going up from the lowest to the highest note and right back, not getting back to the lowest note because the next lowest note will be the new bass note for the next chord. So, without confusing you anymore, it sounds like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and. Straight, easy 6 notes. And as an intro, we would just run through the D to the D sus 4. And maybe for the variety on the 4th measure, make it a D sus 2, taking the F sharp off. So just have, again, a little melodic variation there. And then we just run through the chords like we did in the strumming version. G, A, B minor, really important thing about this type of pattern is when you get to the sixth note, it doesn't matter if you get it right or clear as long as you play something in there. Now you may have not just noticed it because I was talking about it or talking over it a second ago. The way John Denver really played this, of course, he did a lot of his songs on a 12-string guitar, and this was no exception. I'm going to play it on a 6-string. He also did it in drop D tuning. So we're going to take the 6th string and tune it down to D. Notice what I did right there, by the way, when you're going into drop D tuning. Take it down lower than D and then bring it up to it. The tuning gears work better, everything's more accurate when you do it that way. So now I have my 6th string tuned to D. Another quick tip on getting your 6th string tuned to D, if you're familiar with the tuning of using harmonics at the 5th fret of one string to match the 7th fret of the next string, that's when the strings are tuned 5 frets apart, as most of the strings are in standard tuning. When you need notes that are tuned 7 frets apart, which is what we've done here, we've lowered the 6th string down a whole step to D. We now can use the 7th fret of the lower string to match the 12th fret of the higher string. So 7 and 12 are harmonics you can use to tune notes that are 7 frets apart or a 5th apart, as opposed to 5 frets apart, which is a 4th. Oh, I better stop with the math. But that's a good check for getting your 6th string down to D, is compare the 7th fret of the 6th string to the 12th fret of the 5th. Make it match. There we go. Now when I play my D chord, I've got that low D in the bass. So now we're going to talk about the way, John Denver, of course, on his 12 string, if you happen to see videos of this, his 12 string guitar was tuned a whole step lower than this, and then he put a capo at the 2nd fret to actually put him in the key of D. So if you notice that he plays this capoed, that's the explanation. 12 string guitars most people leave their 12 string tuned a whole step low in the first place, and then if they want to be at standard pitch, they put a capo at the 2nd. So we don't need that now. Again, at the top of this lesson, I put a capo at the 2nd fret to sing it, to put it in the key of E, which was a slightly better key for me to sing it in. Now, what we want to do here is, what John does, is keeps a steady 3/4 note pattern going with his thumb throughout a lot of it, and then keeps arpeggiating 8th notes. Now, I am just randomly hitting those notes, generally adding 5 notes to the 3 notes I'm playing in the bass. So a very quick example would be I've got 6 8th notes in the measure. I really can randomly do anything on those 6 notes as long as I have the bass note first on the first beat. The other 5 notes could be this, which is the regular pattern. Thumb, index, middle, ring, middle, index. But I could also do this. I went ring, I went from 1st to the 2nd to the 3rd, back to the 2nd, and back to the 3rd. Now I'm going to use string numbers, not finger numbers, okay? So get it in your head that these 3 fingers stay on the top 3 strings all the time. Although even he doesn't do this all the time. He kind of does. But so I could hit the bass note and then play these 3 fingers in any order. That time I went from the 2nd string to the 1st to the 3rd string. Anyway, listen to that again. Again, anything you want to do just to keep it flowing. And then along with that, we can put in bass notes on the 1st, 3rd, and 5th 8th note.